This is Jeff Shine, the voice of Carlos in Resident Evil 3, and you're listening to the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast.
What is going on, everyone?
How's it going, everyone?
Welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Resident Evil podcast, and this is a special review episode, and we are reviewing Resident Evil Apocalypse. Thanks for waiting 6 to 8 months since the last movie review, but we're here now, and this is going to be a special show, and if you're listening to this or watching this, just know you can always catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, and you can download the shows for free. If you don't want to watch it on YouTube with the video or ads or whatever the case may be, you can download it there. And you can also consider supporting us on Patreon. We got the link down below, which is $1 a month. You can pledge and vote on polls that we use for content to gauge content for the channel. It's down below. And we also have our socials.
Yes.
You know, we got Discord, we got Facebook, we got Instagram, and we got Twitter. So check those out as well. And don't forget to check out LTRE.store where we got the merch going on. So you can grab yourself some LTRE merch. We got plenty of shirts. We got the logo shirt. We got the Lady D shirt. We got the Toon shirt. We got it all. So check that out if you haven't yet. And the links are down below. But it's really good to be here today to talk about Apocalypse because it has been a while since we did the first movie review. And of course, when you see this, we also did a commentary, so check out the commentary because we're putting these out both simultaneously. So if you want to listen to us do a little in-depth commentary about it before we did the review, obviously this is coming after the commentary, so that was kind of another way for us to watch it and kind of collect our thoughts and take notes, and here we are. We're talking about Resident Evil Apocalypse, which was directed by Alexander Witt and written by Paul W.S. Anderson, released on September 10th of 2004. And this is a movie that I also saw in the theater when it came out.
I did too.
Yeah.
I did see Apocalypse in the theater.
Yeah, so I have good memories of, you know, waiting for this to come out and seeing everything in the magazines and kind of getting excited to see Nemesis and kind of see how they translated RE2 and 3 on the big screen. And that's kind of where this movie is, you know, kind of circled around, is the Raccoon City events, and whether or not they are accurate or not to the game is what we're really going to get into, and how we feel about it as a whole, and really get right into it. And that's the big thing, too, with everything happening between Paul W.S. Anderson's career at this point. He was directing Alien vs. Predator.
Correct,
so he did not come back to direct this like the first film. He wrote the screenplay, and that's what he was doing at the time of this.
Yeah, he wrote the screenplay, and he obviously produced it, because he was part of it.
Right.
So.
And it's Screen Gems, Constantine Films, same studio that literally put all of them out. And this was still shot on film as it was back then. And you could definitely tell. And the 4K transfer is also really good on this thing that we watched.
It's really nice.
But let's get into the cast, because this is a cast in a more open film than the first film. The first film was very claustrophobic and isolated, and it was like set amount of soldiers and then Alice mixed in with the people that were working for Umbrella, and it was very like everything else already kind of died by the time they got to the Hive. Similar situation here, but with the cast, though, let's talk about that, because we obviously know the main role is Milla Jovovich playing Alice, and Alice is back. And the big thing with Alice is, you know, with this movie, this kind of really, you know, pushes her a little bit more with more of her acting, because she kind of played a more dazed and confused individual in the first one because of what she was exposed to and stuff like that. So I feel like she was able to flex a little bit more with this role. And we also have Sienna
Guillory.
Guillory. I don't want to butcher that. Guillory as Jill Valentine, which is,
probably
again,
Guillory.
Awesome to see Jill in this film. So that's the biggest thing, is that they're bringing, you know, more video game characters, because people were like, well, where the hell's Jill in the first film? That's what I was thinking when I, you know, watched it back then. or a lot of people thought Alice was Jill. You always hear those stories all the time.
Not just Jill. Everybody wanted to know where Chris was. Everyone wanted to know where Barry was.
Yeah, longing for some kind
Wesker
of
was.
right, longing for some kind of like,
we hit on Jill a lot here
game.
because Jill's one of our favorites.
Right.
But like, don't forget, guys, like, there was nobody in the first film. This is just Alice.
Yep.
And for what it is worth, like we said in the other podcast, Resident Evil is a pretty decent movie. It's not that bad. There are some things that are a little questionable about it, but part of the reason why they wanted to shift those characters in now is because that was the biggest criticism of Resident Evil from fans.
Mm-hmm.
And you grew up during that time. We were both young watching these movies in theaters.
Seeing kind of like our favorite games being translated onto the screen in a different kind of way.
And it's risky to do that and not bring characters over, especially with a game like Resident Evil that has a story, that has a cast.
And now you're making a film that's pretty much centered around the biggest events in Resident Evil history, basically.
The Raccoon City, yeah.
The Raccoon City incident. So
Raccoon City is what they go back to. Nobody ever mentions this is like the mansion. Nobody ever says that. It's always blanketed into this is just like it's Raccoon City all over again.
And we never get really an Arkley Mountains Spencer Mansion shown in these movies ever.
No, just the closest thing is the first house that they're in the beginning.
Exactly.
But then it's basically just a laboratory in the first one.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think was a missed opportunity because I think if the first movie took place and they cut it half and half into a lab, into the hive. I almost said the red hive, but into the hive and into that house a little bit more. I think it could have had some really cool suspense mystery because especially with everything Alice was going through.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of weird that they chose to kind of start it like this, and then now all of a sudden we're kind of being quickly shifted to more of these characters that are kind of being included around Alice, this character that doesn't exist around those other characters in the games.
Yeah.
So we also have Oded Fair as Carlos Oliveira, so right along Jill Valentine. 2 people from Resident Evil 3 put right here. And then we also have we're going to get into this, why this is probably the worst, most forgettable villain, played by Thomas Kretschmann.
Yeah.
And it's Major Timothy Kane.
Yeah, I don't even... I'll give my thoughts on the cast in a minute, but after we go through the cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. The one thing besides him, and I want to say this right now before we get into the nitty gritty, is that he's definitely the worst of this cast. The cast isn't bad.
And that could be for any reason.
Right.
We're not saying he's a shit actor, right? Like it's not just, we're not personally attacking, Thomas.
I just personally think that if they were trying to write a villain character, that they should have tried to obviously maybe make it Nikolai, make it a character that we know instead of just like an unknown Bluetooth piece wearing.
He's less interesting.
Boring guy.
He's less interesting than Resident Evil 1 Wesker.
If you can imagine that. And you
Stop
can.
it.
We are sealing the gates.
Yeah,
but obviously we'll get into those scenes that he's in because that's when we'll kind of talk about his actions. We have Sophie Vavasseur. That sounds like a fucking dinosaur. That rhymed. Angela Ashford.
She plays Angie, yeah.
So Angie, and she is the little damsel in distress because she gets kind of separated. And then we have Razak Adadi as Sergeant Peyton Wells, which is Peyton is the sergeant in Stars. And we see this character, again, a new Stars member, someone that's made up within the lore. But it's cool to have Jill kind of interact with someone else because the interaction that she gets with Carlos or other members isn't there in this movie.
No.
So she needed someone else to like kind of bounce off of, to be like, you're my teammate. I've worked with you before, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And then we have Jared Harris as Dr. Charles Ashford, which is the ginger in the wheelchair. And he is pretty much working for Umbrella. And obviously comes up with the T-virus for his daughter because she's dealing with biological issues, or we'll kind of get into that.
She was dealing with some type of health issues, and
right.
he was developing the T-virus to basically make her better.
And they were taking the research away from him, and so he kind of plays the Birkin kind of.
He's like Birkin
character.
and Marcus and Wesker Not really Wesker so much, but he's more like Birkin and Marcus together.
And she's kind of like
Nobody.
a Sherry.
She's
but
kind of
not-
like a Sherry, yeah.
but not really,
But not
because
really.
again, they're just kind of like spinning it in a way.
It feels a lot like they took Birkin and Birkin's daughter,
And just-
Sherry, and then named them Ashford, and then put him in a wheelchair.
I love that they used Ashford because you could tell that they just wanted to take like the name and just be like, all right, Ashford, like why, you could have named him anything else, you know what I mean? We have Mike Epps as Lloyd Jefferson LJ Wade, nickname LJ.
My favorite character in the movie.
Really good.
Yeah, other
Really
than
good
Jill,
character.
of course. Jill's a cheat because she's a real character. But like, other than Jill,
Yeah, he's the comic relief, but he's also just really awesome.
I like
He's
him more than
always
Carlos
badass.
and Nikolai.
Yeah.
I think he's just. I think they found the perfect balance.
And
for
I
him.
like the fact that him and Carlos, by extinction, they're like they're like buddies.
Yeah.
Like they're like cool with each
They're
other.
cool
Like
with
they're
each
giving
other.
they're giving each other cigarettes, and he'll hide cigarettes from him and say he doesn't have any. Like little things like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. We also have
Sandrine
Holt as Terry Morales.
Yeah, she's the one that plays the reporter, the news woman.
Who's getting her scoop? Because
Who's getting her scoop.
Gotta
yeah.
get the scoop.
She basically kind of plays like Alyssa.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because this movie came out before Outbreak.
Yeah, this was right before.
It was like
RE4.
right
This
before.
was 4 months away from RE4, and
Actually, was
they
it
were already
before
working on Outbreak.
Outbreak? Yeah, they were working on Outbreak, yeah. So it was like right as the time that those characters were coming
And
out.
Outbreak
And I thought it
was
was
being made,
interesting
yeah.
that LJ is a lot like Jim. He kind of feels like an Outbreak character. Like he's like funny and like,
Right.
He's not as useless as Jim. He's got, custom
No.
gold Lugers and stuff, but he's kind of a lot like Jim.
Or Magnums, whatever the
They're
fuck they are.
custom
Yeah,
guns.
they look like custom fucking. Well, here's the thing. So with Outbreak, because Outbreak was already out at this time.
Yeah, 2003, right?
So it was March 31st, 2004. So
it was Outbreak. It was out. I
Right.
thought so. Okay.
So while the script was pretty much almost
It was
being
before
written
Outbreak
or
2.
being filmed,
Yeah.
that probably came out while it was being filmed. So
Filmed.
they might have, maybe while it was being made, Outbreak uses the same font as the video game. So it's just very little things that they could have borrowed from.
They could have,
little
yeah.
things that here and there.
Because I was thinking it's interesting that you have like a Jim character, and then with the report, like the newswoman kind of reporter scoop girl, you kind of have Alyssa, like a very like
Yeah.
a similar role.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's kind of hitting on, different kind of pieces in the groups that,
Yeah.
kind of lead to different
they're the only two
layers.
They're
Yeah.
the only two extra characters really that
Right.
don't have business really being there, but they're interesting.
And it's cool because with this film, the biggest thing that we wanted to see was Nemesis, and that is played by Matthew G. Taylor. And obviously, he did a great job in the makeup and stuff like that, and we'll kind of get more into that.
They use the English words for the characters. Obviously, Nikolai is originally spelled Z with a Z, so it's Zinoviev.
Zinoviev.
But I don't fault them for that. One thing we did gloss over is, for whatever reason, they misspell Oliveira in this movie. And like, it wouldn't be a big deal if it wasn't on the screen and
It's
on his back.
back.
And it's misspelled, which is a little interesting. There's a couple of inconsistencies which they just changed for no reason. And I kind of sort of like have some gripes with that. Like, I think that's kind of dumb. Like the fact it's like Special Tactics and Rescue Squad
Right.
in this movie when it's always been service.
Yeah.
I know it was written as Squad, I'm pretty sure, in the original RE1 manual. But like, remake was out by this point.
Yeah. They
They were not looking at the original.
Been
Yeah.
Like, okay, continuity.
Yeah. But that's just a little gripe going in, just because it pertains to the cast.
And then you got Ian Glenn as Dr. Alexander Isaacs. And of course, he's very small in this film, but he's going to be a character they use going forward. And this is the cast of characters we have before we get into the main, plot and what's going on. And so these cast of characters, in my opinion, I think this cast is more entertaining to watch throughout what we're about to describe to you guys. Than the first one. I just thought that it was a more entertaining cast. Not to say that Miljovic and Michelle Rodriguez and everyone else didn't do a good job, but I think that these characters, while there may have been more chemistry than others, it's fun to watch in what we're about to talk about and all the events that are about to happen. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about the cast going into this film besides compared to the first one?
So overall, I think that the entire cast did a pretty solid job. I think they've met pretty much what I would expect from acting in a movie like this. Major Timothy Kane is the standout, obviously. Thomas Kretschmann, or whatever his name, however you say his last name. It's a no from me. He's bad. And I don't know if that's the fault of the actor, because I kind of feel like the actor was put in a tough situation. And I'm not sure if it's the actor or if it was the writing or the voice director or the acting director, whoever was the one that was letting him do what he was doing on screen. It sucked. I'm just going to not sugarcoat it. It was bad. I would give him a 3 or a 2 out of 10. And I'd probably give every other character a 7 or higher.
Definitely the most boring character out of all of it. Because
he's bad.
It's just not a good villain. You want your villains to be like really memorable or someone from the fucking game.
Well, the acting that Dr. Isaac brings to the table later.
Right. Yeah, because he's a good actor.
Is even way, way better than him, and he's more ridiculous.
Exactly.
This guy just
they put him in way more ridiculous situations later, and he pulls it off better.
Oh, way better.
Way better.
This guy just needs to be a plank.
And even in Game of Thrones, Ian's a good actor. So it's just one of those things where it's like you see those dynamics of like, okay, was it the screenplay? Was it, whatever? Was it just he was phoning it in?
But Alexander Witt, who directed this movie, spent a lot of his career as a secondary crew and secondary camera person. So what he basically did was he was like director number 2, which is where there's the main director, for those of you who do not know.
Then you got the assistant director.
And you have the assistant director. He's in charge of like the second unit director is in charge of his whole separate team. They do separate shoots and everything while the main team does their stuff. And I just wanted to say, because I think it's credit that's well deserved, for this being the first film he ever directed, his directorial debut, he did a kick-ass job.
I would agree. I think that's a great point. Because
he made a great thing out of a bad, I would say it's a pretty tough situation. And I think with all of that pressure on him,
where it's green lit and then you're given this screenplay to work with and you don't really
probably
have a say
at
in
the last minute.
You don't have a say in that,
Because Paul was probably supposed to direct this, but then he got Alien vs. Predator.
Well, it was saying when it was green lit, he turned down directing immediately because he knew of the obligations.
Okay.
So the big thing is that he was probably just like, I don't want to touch it directing wise, but this is my screenplay. So he was kind of probably just, Alexander was probably given the fucking screenplay and was like, all right, this is what I got to do.
Yeah,
so
and he's worked on a lot.
Yeah.
He's worked on a lot. I wrote down a couple here. He's worked on The Bourne Identity, which I thought was a great movie. Aeon Flux was okay. He's also worked on Pirates of the Caribbean and Remember the Titans. A ton more. And recently, he just put out that Jungle Cruise movie.
Yeah.
With The Rock.
Right.
So like that's his other thing, and he also has movies on the way.
Yeah, so he's still working to this day.
Yeah, he's still working.
And a lot of people get this movie confused that Paul Anderson actually directed this as well, but he didn't. And he also didn't direct the sequel, which is Extinction.
Yeah,
he would come back for Afterlife. That would be his comeback after the first film.
I just thought that was important.
Yeah,
because
for
before we start picking it apart, because there is a lot to complain about in this movie, even though it's.
There's a lot of things we like, and then there's stuff that we don't like.
I definitely think it's funny how it was his first ever directorial debut, and he made, of my opinion, the best film in this 6-part series.
I think so too. It's my favorite in the whole series.
So
of
credit
films.
where credit's due.
Exactly. Yeah.
We definitely want to give him some love. Alexander Witt, you did a fantastic job for the situation you were put in.
Right, and what you were given in that time, because again, there was differences that were already made by Paul, and you can't really go back and change that stuff. No. So you're only, that screenplay is a screenplay. Now, whether stuff was changed on the set or stuff was changed for limitations or whatever, I'm not too sure of particular stuff. But
we did watch the behind the scenes, and it didn't really feel like it. It kind of felt like he kind of stayed by the script for the most part.
And they shot in Canada again, so this was shot in Toronto City,
cities,
and they had those set pieces. The beginning of the plot in this movie is, of course, the Raccoon City incident starting to pretty much occur, but it actually goes before the end of the first film, where we get to see, of course, it kind of shows Alice, getting held back. Clueless Matt gets taken into
full
the
recap.
fucking full recap, basically, of just being like, this is because this recap would be a recurring theme in the whole series. My name is Alice. this, and this, and this is what happened. So this has kind of started that trend for the next 5 films, or 4 films after this. So starting with this one. But yes, Clueless Matt gets taken away into the Nemesis program, as we saw him starting to mutate into Nemesis at the end of the first one. The Nemesis-ing is happening, and
Clueless Matt's like...
Clueless Matt is just stretchered away. He's just like, oh, no.
Alice is like,
which,
people.
was supposed to be her somewhat love interest and a person that she kind of liked, and that seed was kind of planted in this first film and will kind of come back at the very end of this one.
And his sister was her contact.
Right.
There was they tried to make it more than it ended up being.
Try to make it more of a connection, and a connection to Umbrella in addition to that. So, but yeah, so it ends with all of that happening, and then before she obviously wakes up, the Umbrella, they send a team to investigate what happened there, and they're overrun by zombies, and of course that spreads to Raccoon City. And the big thing here is they react immediately by quarantining the city, and that is kind of where, they're pretty much trying to contain this infection, but obviously the numbers are already going up with the T virus, so they can't even control it. So I like that idea of them trying to quarantine the city,
which they did.
Which they did. But I like that they show the reaction of the crowd, which is something that you don't really see in the games. The people kind of trying to leave, but then they're told no, and they're told they'll be shot at if they don't listen to them. So it kind of plays into the whole kind of fucked up, we're selfish, we're gonna do stuff for
and it's
ourselves.
Umbrella too.
Right.
In the games, especially because you really only see that in Outbreak. You get to see that stuff, which was being developed it came out right before this movie.
Yeah.
And I think you only really see more of that in the second one, which is after this movie.
Yes.
So
that came
you
out
don't
in
really
05,
see,
right?
you don't see a ton of that in the games. So I think it was a good angle, and it was more of a realistic thing.
Yeah.
They did kind of sort of show a little bit of that recently in Remake 3, where when it's happening, people are trying to evacuate and stuff. Right. You didn't really get that in the original trilogy.
They try to make it more theatrical, and that it makes sense,
which was a nice touch. Yeah. I definitely enjoyed it in this part.
Yeah,
until Timothy Dickhead walks on. What is his name?
Timothy Kane. And now, right before this scene, though, we also get the scene where Jill appears, and Jill does appear in the police station really quickly. You don't see the police station any longer than the section where
she basically walks through it.
They're getting overrun by zombies, and she comes in and just starts capping people off.
Great music.
Headshot. Great music. Great shot of her walking in with the miniskirt. This is the best rendition of Jill we'll ever get on screen that's accurate to Resident Evil 3. In regards to how they wrote her character from here on out, not really strong, but
this is her best scene.
This is her best scene, and I think that also, I think that she interacted well with the other cast. I don't know. I just thought that this was always a great little introduction to Jill. You see everything on the wall, the reports, the newspaper. You see her picture. Like John mentioned, there's a sense of her being casted out, not being able to come back, even though there was no Spencer Mansion incident. So
yeah, there wasn't, and she's getting outcasted, kind of with the source material of Resident Evil. And when Anthony says that I mentioned, he means before the podcast,
right?
Just so nobody thinks that they missed anything,
right?
Because we talked about this beforehand. It's probably one of both of our favorite scenes in the whole movie.
I think so. It's short, and obviously LJ makes an appearance in this scene as well.
He's handcuffed. He's
wait, don't shoot.
He's,
and then
she's trying to get away
from the
zombie
she's like, everyone
girl.
else is leaving the city. I suggest you do the same.
I
and
suggest you
she's
do
just
the same. Yeah, her impact in this scene is really good.
Yeah, she's pissed at this point because she feels like everyone else kind of cheated her out, and there's kind of that. We only feel that a little bit because we have a remnants of the game, but most people will be like, well, what, this is just...
Most people would just see, she's a badass bitch with guns.
Exactly.
That's what they went for, though, because that works, right? That works for a casual audience, but for us who knows Jill and knows by the end of RE3 she's a badass, this is the Jill. They show this Jill. This is the end of RE3 Jill.
Yeah.
Not even the start of RE3 Jill.
No.
This is the end of RE3
Yeah.
Jill when she's done.
Yeah, where she's pretty much fed up, and
That's most people's favorite Jill.
absolutely. And
And I really liked it.
This is great. I love this scene, and that again kind of goes right into the scene with the gate where they do have the quarantining happening, and of course Jill and Peyton are both there, and this is the first time that they see a side of them. Now, whether they had suspicions, of course, up until this point, everyone has, and the whole conspiracy of like, well, Umbrella can't be doing this because X, Y, and Z, but they have control of the whole city.
I think Peyton even says at one point they're just a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
And then Alice laughs at him on the tram.
Yeah, exactly.
On the cable car, yeah.
And it's like,
Later
you know,
on.
so naive. Like some people will just think like, well, it's face value, right? So them sealing off the gate, and then Timothy Kane comes out, and it's just like, oh, the infection spread so fast already. Like, it's already...
no. Because what happens is they're actually getting people out of the city. They're
They
like
are
checking them.
Right.
So it's interesting because we talked about this during our commentary, I think it was during our commentary, which you guys will see because it's coming
Up
out
until this point,
alongside.
yeah.
It will be in the link. Will be in the description as well. We actually talked about it's really cool that Umbrella seemed to be trying to actually save people.
They did, and then the one father got
The father had like
infected,
the heart attack.
and he turned and,
he
bit,
turned,
and
and
bit
his-
Peyton's leg.
And I love how when I mean, it's not funny, but it is.
Right.
When he falls down, I love the line that his daughter delivers where she's just like, my father has a weak heart. Everyone get away from him. And then your boy Timothy Kane, your boy, not my boy, your boy.
No, I don't.
He walks
like
up
him.
and he's like, seal the gates, sir. Our men are still down there. He's like, seal the gates.
Seal the gates. Seal the gates. Yeah, so he's like the infection, is spreading, and of course
It's the inspection, all right.
the inspection of
death.
infection, and they close the gates, and everyone gets pissed, and then they tell everyone to back away from the door, and with that they threaten them with gunfire, which they're like, oh, they're not going to do that, and then they actually start firing live ammunition into the crowd, and then Jill, obviously Peyton gets bit, and you know,
Which will pay off later.
which will pay off later
in
but
a couple scenes, actually.
but she's also like, why didn't you leave? You know, you should have got out. And she's like, these are our people, Jill. Like, I'm not going to leave them hanging. Like, we're in this. Like, we actually...
Peyton did a good job acting, too.
Yeah.
My question is why wasn't he just Kenneth?
Yeah.
Why? And that's going to be a reoccurring thing. Like, why not throw the Jobber Stars characters? Because there's a lot of Stars members in this movie.
Right.
Why not throw the Jobber Stars members a bone and give Forrest and give Kenneth and Richard? And if you're not going to use them for what they were used in the source material,
And you're going to have another Stars member include, because he's the only other one that we see that
has
isn't-
a name.
That has a name. All the other ones are
there's
just...
a sniper guy.
There's a sniper guy, there's the cowboy guy, and then there's everyone else underneath him, which are like, you know, whatever.
That's
however many people.
really it.
And so we don't really get like anything else. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good point.
Also, one thing we did gloss over because of the way that it's shot in the beginning, we're also introduced before this scene to, I believe it's before this scene. It's when they go get Ashford.
Right. I think so.
It's like real quick.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
It's real quick because what they do is the Timothy Kane sends a team to go retrieve Ashford.
You're right.
And then we see Angie get pulled from school.
Yes, you're right.
And
And they
then
pull
it
that
goes
scientist
to-
lady that we see at
Yes,
the end.
at the end.
Yes.
Who is also seen later on. Then it cuts to Jill, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
yeah. Bop, bop, bop.
And then it gets to this part. We skipped over it by accident because the titles of the chapters are weird, but like it's definitely that happens.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that up is because after we get past this part, when we get past Seal the Gates, we're getting into where I almost said Ashley. Shout out to Nuge. We were watching his RE4 stream. He grenaded Ashley. That son of a
He
bitch.
hates her. He was just like,
But yeah, we're going to see Alice in a second, and that's when we get to see that Ashford is looking for people
yes.
in the city
Yes,
that are
because
left
he gets
alive.
taken into the quarantine tents where, where they're like kind of like hiding out, I guess, outskirts of the city or somewhere, where he can still access it. But yeah, so Angie is escorted, of course, from the school before nighttime, and she gets separated because there's a car accident while they're in the convoy, and they're like, we just lost unit, whatever.
Yeah,
and she's
10 or
just
something, G10 or something.
in the city on her own. So kind of like the Sherry in this situation. Just
It almost makes you feel like. Doesn't it almost make you feel like somebody hit them on purpose? Because like they're just like what?
Yeah, like why did that happen? Yeah,
they
why
just get smacked. I guess they were cutting like through the intersection or something.
That's probably what it was. They're probably doing some sketchy umbrella shit, but yeah. So that's the biggest thing is like that's kind of the setup because she's trying to basically hide while all of this is happening in the city, and everything else kind of goes in with Alice at this point. Now it flash forwards to Alice waking up while all this is happening because now all the stuff with Angie happened during the day, and the quarantine is starting to happen at night, and then Alice wakes
and that's
up.
where UBCS and Carlos comes in. Nikolai's there with him, and so is another guy I call Mikhail because what's his name? Yuri. Yuri's there too, and that's kind of where everything starts to happen as far as like. You get to see a little bit of the UBCS, and you get a lot of really traditional scenes that were found in Resident Evil 3.
Which is just fucking awesome.
Which is great because they're the best scenes. Now, I got to ask you, since we're at this point, and this happened a couple times since then, how do you feel about like the slow-mo that they abuse in this movie? Like, and I don't mean abuse as a bad thing either. I'm just saying like it's very often... They kind of use this effect on the screen where the zombies move in like 6 frames per second.
Yeah, it's very. Do
you think that it's a little too late in the 2000s? Like, do you think maybe if this was the 90s they get away with it? But do you think in the 2000s it was a little like choppy?
Unfortunately, it worked in the 2000s because they kept doing it a lot more during like the mid 2000s.
You've seen a lot more horror movies than I have. What other movies was this prevalent in? Would you say?
I mean, a lot of. I mean, the thing is Paul Anderson when he's writing these scripts. I don't know if it was he put that in the script or it was a director's choice, probably a director's choice at this point. And so whatever Alexander did, I mean, I think that
because he's got a lot of experience, bro.
There's not a lot of instances where this was used with zombies. I mean, I would say there was a lot of slow-mo stuff and
like
Zack
scenes.
Snyder stuff and different like 300 and
300,
a lot of his films and a lot of the biggest thing too is a lot of the cuts are fast, and that was a common thing that so many horror movies and action movies did is that it would sometimes cut so fast you wouldn't even be able to know what's going on the screen. Michael Bay is an example of that. So there's like different things where some of it could have been pulled back a little bit and you didn't have to add that. I'm not really a fan of that.
It was a very weird slow-mo, though,
It's weird. It looks...
300's got, like, the kick, right? Everybody knows the kick
Or when they're running at each other.
Or
like, they have that...
But it's, like, slow. It's, like, fluid. Like, it's, like...
Right. It's
in
like
this movie,
motion...
it's, like, choppy slow-mo. And I was just curious, did you think that was a good choice?
No, I don't really think... I'm not really a fan of it because I like when there's zombie movies and they showcase zombies in just, like, a normal... Because either have them running or have them walking, Yeah,
I have a theory for you, and I wanted to see what you thought about this. Do you think they did that because they wanted to make the zombies appear faster, even though they were slow?
Maybe, or I think they were trying to have an eerie like effect, like make it kind of like...
Because I was thinking...
disorienting.
Didn't they do this in the first movie, too?
A little bit,
right?
They did.
So I was thinking that how like you have Carlos and they're like shooting and it's like action, right? By the way, we already said this before, but the soundtrack in this movie is really good. But he's like really shooting and they're shooting, right? And then it cuts from them shooting to the zombies, and if it was like them shooting and then the zombies like slow. Do you think maybe they thought, that maybe that it would just feel weird, so let's give them like this choppy effect so it looks
maybe
they're like relentlessly horror pursuing?
Yeah, maybe that's probably what they were thinking. Maybe it was just more of like, oh, this looks cool, let's try to do it. Sometimes it's them just trying to like when they're editing, they just think that like they can fuck around with it and see.
I'm
if it
neutral.
Works. Yeah,
I don't think I dislike it.
It doesn't take away from anything. I just really wasn't a fan of like that choice.
I just don't know if I like it. It's like it's weird.
It's very strange, but I mean. Just like to what John said, like this scene really is good. It's pretty much everything. They're rappelling from the helicopters. They're obviously the fucking the RPD is getting fucked up. They're just standing there at one point. And they just fucking.
Oh yeah, that was funny.
They're just standing there and they're just like, oh.
And the funny part is though, it's funny, but it is true to the games because in the games they do the same shit.
They do. They literally do. They're
just like
pop 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 pop. not even shooting him in the head,
it's
like
just
not
funny,
even trying.
bro.
Now in this, they make it apparent that shoot them in the head. That's how you
And
can
Jill
take
says
him
it
out.
immediately.
Jill does say it
which
immediately,
is weird
right from that police station.
because we don't see her before this.
No.
So as soon as she shows up, she's like, shoot him in the head. LJ's all handcuffed. I already said this, but he's handcuffed to the zombie bitch.
Yeah.
It's so funny. He's like, man, get this bitch away from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she just shoots him. And then he's like, don't shoot. She shoots the zombie. And then she shoots his handcuffs. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. No, it's awesome, kind of like cheesiness, and that's kind of like a common theme.
Yeah.
That is kind of like the charm of this film is the over the top cheesiness. But yeah, like they repel to fight off the zombie attacks, and
that's when we cut to Alice waking up in the hospital.
And Alice wakes up in the hospital, and that's kind of where we see the end of the first film is when she goes out and grabs a shotgun. We see the newspaper sign, which says The Dead Walk, which is right from Day of the Dead, which is a really cool reference.
And
again,
it says Raccoon Times.
Raccoon Times.
Which is accurate to Outbreak.
Accurate. So again, like little things that are sprinkled in here are actually really good. And she cocks the shotgun, and that kind of goes into the transition and seeing the other characters where we have them going into the church. Which is the kind of like the introductory of the liquor once more from the first film.
With some changes.
With some changes here, which we'll
more
talk about.
More traditional liquor, too. It's more of an RE2 liquor, which is really the only RE2 thing in the movie is the liquor. And there's a couple more scenes that kind of homage to RE2.
Now, we have the reporter, we have Peyton, we have Jill.
Which the reporter we also didn't mention because it's impossible to get everything perfect in this, but is where it opens up with the Raccoon News. She's on the news.
She is on the news, saying the weather and shit like that.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where we know her from. So
they establish our characters all in the beginning because you see LJ, you see her, you see Jill, you see Angie, you see Ashford.
Yep.
You see the bad guy.
And we know that
Peyton.
Alice is out during this period. So
they
then
do
it goes
show
right to
everybody. The last person they show is Alice.
Yeah.
They do.
Right.
They
so
show
it gets
everybody
you kind of
before Alice.
up to speed with what's going on.
As far as the major characters.
Right. Because really, I think this was a good way to pace it good, too, because I thought the pacing up until this point was really, like, it got you right into it because you knew that all this shit was hitting the fan by the end of the first film, so they didn't waste time at all. They showed you the new characters, but then they're like, okay, now this is the main focus of like how Alice is doing and recovering from what she woke up from.
Yeah, it was almost like they showed all the characters, then they showed them all getting together, except for Angie and Alice, and then they show Alice getting together with them to find Angie, and then when they all get together, it's like the whole cast is together for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Other than, obviously, Peyton, which we'll talk about, because Peyton doesn't make it to... Well, neither does the reporter, but...
Exactly,
They get to the point where they're looking for Angie in the
Right,
school.
they're trying, basically. Yeah. But yeah, so the church scene is a really good scene that I like. I love the thunder and lightning. I like the effects. I like that they added that there was still some kind of weather going on during the Raccoon City incident, which is what happened.
There's rain in RE3.
Right. Not that they were thinking that hard about it, but it's still really cool because we get to see a chapel in a church, which is kind of cool.
A city just looks great in rain.
The set pieces, because I love them in this
I
fucking
actually
movie.
wrote, without you even saying anything, no Sanctuary, the place that we're in now. This is a standout scene for me because I really like the set. I also liked how Jill stumbled upon the priest who was feeding his sister. It was a very sick and twisted thing for the audience to be presented with. And in my opinion, was the most horror that the first two movies had in it.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great scene.
Yeah, no, it is. It shows you the desperation of
he's trying to feed his sister.
Trying to keep that, image of that person alive, even though they're not them anymore.
Just
like they're not that person.
To the fucking
barbed wire to the chair, and of course, this is the because again we find that what they find first is the guy, the blonde hair guy. He's like, "What are you doing?"
Basically Dario.
Basically Dario.
Really.
Yeah, he doesn't really have a name, but he's just like generic.
He's got like
blonde
a
dude,
Magnum.
number one. He's like, "What are you doing in here?" And they're just like, they're like, "Well, we're trying to hide out." And then they're like, "Well, there's something else in here watching us." And long and behold, it is the liquor.
Well, before that you get the jump scare of the thing going across the thing, and then him being like, "What was that?"
Yeah. Yep.
And then they kind of split up first.
And it's interesting because in the extended cut,
Well, I was just gonna say it's really hard for us for the scene because the extended cut's so different.
it is because it's
so
like
different.
you see the licker on the outside of the building watching
Pretending
them
to be a gargoyle.
right, and it's just watching them come in. So there's already that like you already know it's there, but when that's completely taken out of the film, it's like okay, you just see a jump, and you're like, okay, well that's gonna be obvious. Like fans would know, okay, that's a licker right there, or it could be something else. But yeah, it's putting them in a lot sooner in this film.
And
this is the only scene that they're in, though, or that it's in, I should
liquor,
say.
yeah.
Or a couple. There's a couple of them, but you only see them here.
Yeah.
Be like at this
Which
scene.
is fine.
Yeah, I mean, they had to sprinkle them in somewhere.
The games do that a lot, too.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know,
the first movie just had one big
super liquor, or whatever the hell.
This one, it was just multiple liquors. So, again, it's a pretty cool scene regardless. But yeah, so the blonde hair guy goes first because he goes and runs off and tries to, shoot the liquor, and it kills him.
It's the iconic scene from the trailer.
From the TV spot. Yeah. Yep, the tongue goes around him and he dies. But it's interesting because in that scene when he's being stalked by one of the liquors, because there's multiple again, you see the vision of the liquor like a Predator.
Similar, yeah.
And it's similar. It's not the same color.
Infrared or whatever.
But it's like they can't see.
Yeah, Predator's heat.
Right.
He sees
this,
heat.
it's like red.
It's red,
and
yeah.
it's like they can't.
But they can't see.
They can't see. So why are you showing
his vision?
Him through their perspective?
Yeah.
Like they're seeing it because they would be blind and they would hear it. So doesn't make any sense
unless they were going for. This is what the noise sounds like to him, but even that's not even like no.
Right, because we're seeing it through his eye. It's basically trying to make it like we're seeing it through their eyes, and it's like.
And I personally think they would have been scarier in the movie if they would have gone with the fact they were blind. It would have been a lot scarier.
Yeah,
because they were hunting them. They weren't just like.
Yeah, it's like they all ran into that church, and they were like, they broke in, and it's like they were gonna kill them in there, like in that one spot and trap them in. And again, that kind of goes in it goes into Jill investigating the chapel further, and that's when she finds the father with the sister.
Well, it's all happening at the same time.
Kind of all it cuts back and forth
because then he dies when she's doing that, and then she turns around to come back.
Right. So she has to shoot. They hear the gunshots. They hear and they hear the gunshots. Jill takes them both out, kills the sister, kills the father, comes back, and that's when they're boxed in to the little chapel area that has like a door, and they see it. They're like, all right, I spot them, and like they're like, I only got so many X amount of ammo left. So
does she kill them? I don't even remember that.
She doesn't kill.
No, because the sister eats him, bites him, and then.
But she shoots him in the head. You hear her go boom,
she shoots
boom.
them.
Yeah, she puts them out of their misery. So she takes care of them. Yeah. But they're trying to plan out, like, because Peyton and Jill are just like, all right, well, it's now or never. Like, we just have to go and face the music. So they run out of the chapel, start shooting. She has, one thing that I like about Sienna when she played Jill is that they made sure that she was still holding stuff like in a tactical way with the flashlight. Most of the time.
Some of the time, no. But
no, right. But it was pretty consistent.
And it was similar to Jill.
Yeah.
Particularly.
Right. And so she goes out and immediately starts trying to shoot the liquor. They try. The reporter, obviously, she's fumbling around, and then they have to, they get caught. There's a lot of movement. They get caught up, and of course, this is where Alice has to make her big entrance with a motorcycle crashing through the main window of the church, kind of stealing Jill's thunder a little bit, which is going to be a
reoccurring thing.
A reoccurring theme, because that's the big thing here is that this is kind of representing Alice. Now, this is a different Alice in the first film. Whatever they did to her, this is showcasing her power.
Just to drive that nail home, the chapter of this scene in the movie is called A New Kind of Alice.
Yeah.
So it's a new Alice.
Yeah, so she comes
in
mean? With the motorcycle and does a fucking flip. And fucking...
She does a flip off of it, and then it hits the liquor and then rides the liquor up into the air, which is physically impossible, by the way.
But for Alice,
but she does it anyway.
And then she shoots the umbrella bullets right into the gas chamber, blowing it up. And
because it could definitely hit the liquor. I know people are going to leave comments. Well, it's got traction. It could hit the liquor.
But going straight up?
But it could hit the liquor and then either go like this off of the liquor and flip, or run the liquor over, but there's no way it's going to hit the liquor. The liquor's going to get perfectly lined up with
Right.
the tires, and they're both going to go up.
It was just more of like the action cheese of like, all right, just go with it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, but yeah, it doesn't. And then she pulls out Shoddy, shoots, pretty much takes him out.
Well, she gets the umbrella shot, the Billy Cohen shot.
Well, that's what I was
first.
saying. She shoots the umbrella bullets into the
Yeah.
gas chamber.
Into
Yeah,
the gas
she shoots
chamber,
that,
yeah.
and it blows up. And then she
The
takes
other one
out
gets
the
hit
shotgun,
with the cross.
takes a cross down, shoots him in the head, and then pushes the fucking bench into the other one. So when she shoots the one licker's head, the brains splatter all over Jill's boots, and then she's like, "Who the fuck are you?" Which is what we're all saying to ourselves when we watch this movie, because we're like, why? So yeah, she comes in and pretty much steals the show in regards to this little scene here. Which, like, it's fine that she makes an introduction like this, but, like, damn, Jill should have had a little bit more of a punch in this film as far as, like, helping and getting out of situations. But again, the whole idea of this scene is to showcase this is Alice, this is who she is now, and this is, her new and improved self. And once that happens, they take a convenient shortcut to the cemetery, which is also in Resident Evil 3, which is a cool little touch that they added in there. So they will go to the cemetery, which is right next to the churchyard, and
This is the scene where Jill's
Yeah.
promise is set up, because they are all walking away, and then Peyton starts coughing.
Yep.
And Alice asks,
pulls out a gun immediately.
pulls out a gun immediately,
and aims
says,
it at
how
him.
long have you been infected? And he's like 2 hours or something or whatever. And Jill basically says, like, if it comes to that, I'll be the one to do it. And then she's like, I promise. I promise
Right.
I'll be the one to do it.
Because she feels a responsibility for her comrades, which makes sense because,
Yeah.
You see this random bitch crash into a window and all of a sudden she's pointing a gun at your friend and your colleague. Like, you're just
Yeah.
like, yo, no, like,
Because she
I'm in
pulls the
charge
gun
of
out
this.
immediately, and Jill
And then
pulls the gun out
Jill,
immediately.
which I like because it shows the hostile, like, I'm not trusting you right now. Like, I don't really know, like, what, like, you literally came
Well, it
out,
also
you
shows
came
her-
out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah, it also
Like,
shows her ability to be fast and
Yeah.
quick thinking.
Right.
It was a natural reaction for her to pull a gun on somebody who's pulling a gun on one of her members.
And she's a stranger at this point. Like,
She is, yeah.
she's trying to fill them in, and it's like you don't even know if you can trust them at this point. Because that's the big thing. But when they go through the graveyard, of course, that interaction happens, and then of course
That's where the camcorder comes into play, because
Right.
she talks about, like, she's like, what do you have that for, or whatever. And then
like, this is
they're
my
like, yeah,
Emmy if I
this
ever
is-
make it out of
if I ever
here,
make it out of here.
So she's trying to document everything that's going on through a little camcorder, and again, kind of playing the snobby reporter that has to get her scoop. Pretty useless as a character, but again, it makes sense because those kind of characters exist within the universe and
For
also
sure.
in real life. Like, there's people that just want to get the scoop and they're kind of helpless in these situations. Why would she know how to use a gun? She does the fucking weather every morning. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
she's only gonna lend so much, and she's there for a particular reason. But but yeah. So the zombies, though, they come out of the graves, which is, again, doesn't really make sense for the T virus to be reanimating them because they don't have any actual brain left.
No, but that's
You guys just go with it because it happened in RE3.
Yeah.
It happens in this.
happens in Code Veronica.
It's a badass fight scene. I do like this scene. Obviously, it kind of shows off some more close quarter combat with Alice. She's whipping people. She's flipping them. She's kicking them against
Yeah.
the fucking tombstone. Maggots are flying everywhere. They're
Jill's
all
fucking
fighting
people up.
Jill's fucking people up. So it's
Peyton's
a good
doing
balance.
whatever he's doing.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure he's fighting people too.
yeah. So it's a good scene where they're kind of getting surrounded and.
Yeah, I think that this scene is one of the standout action scenes in the movie. It feels like the precursor to the action element Resident Evil's franchise would later adopt. I think that this film, along with the first one, influenced Resident Evil's action direction more than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
More than people think. A lot
Right.
of people don't think they've influenced it. I disagree.
Right.
I definitely think the first two movies of this franchise heavily influenced Resident Evil. Shinji Mikami completely scrapped what 4 was going to be
Yeah.
as these movies were coming out.
Yeah, and
Like,
4 was on its way out at
Yeah.
this point. This is the era that, this kind of film.
the laser scene was taken from 4,
Yeah.
not from 4, 4.
4.
Taken
yeah.
from the movie.
From the movie into 4.
So they definitely had some some influence on it, but I think this is the best action scene in the movie.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the fighting choreography is great. I think they nailed it. They
And
really
the
hit it out of the park.
cinematography is great, too.
Cinematography is great. Great set piece too for a cemetery. Just really good. Like I think they had a nice balance of the fight scenes between everyone. Like I think everyone kind of had a fair shot here. And after this scene, this was the kind of scene that I was waiting for, especially when I watched this for the first time, was the Nemesis program being activated. So Nemesis actually waking up.
Yeah.
So we actually see him finally wake up. The computers turn on, everything gets activated, and
As
it's time for that
Nikolai
to happen.
and Carlos are taking Yuri to the hospital because they saw that something was dropped.
Yes,
Into the
and he
hospital.
gets bit in this process. So they're still out at this point in time in this timeline. They're still out in the streets, still trying to fight off everything. So
Yeah.
we see him with Nikolai, and
Carlos
we see
gets bit by Yuri.
right. He does,
the
but Yuri
hospital.
gets bit first.
Yeah,
Yuri
yeah,
gets
Yuri
bit
gets
because
bit.
a door falls on him.
Yeah.
and the zombie comes out of the door, and then he bites him in the arm.
Yep.
And that's when he throws a grenade. And then
That
they're
was
just like-
earlier, yeah.
Yeah, well, no, this happens right after the Nemesis program gets activated. Then it cuts to them
Then it cuts to them,
in
yeah.
the street. So it happens to them there, and then after that, they go into the hospital where they saw the helicopters pass and drop ammo crates, which is for Nemi because he just woke up. So
and you see them walk by his room.
yes, you do. Yeah, they look into the room and they see the empty bed where he was at, and he obviously left at that point and took the weapon cases. So.
So it's like, how the hell was he there?
And they're just like, these weren't meant for us. Like, Carlos knows immediately, like, these are for something else. And then he's like, we don't need weapons. We need evacuation. Like, Nikolai's,
he
like,
kicks
pissed.
him.
And then at that point, that's when Yuri bites Carlos, and then they have to put him down. And, again, leaving just them and Carlos pretty much abandoned. And it's shortly after that where they realize that, they were left for dead. At that point, they already knew, like,
We're expendable.
we're expendable.
Because he's out there
assets,
wrapping
like,
his wound in the,
Right.
at the hospital thing, at the ambulance. He's
like
out
we're
there wrapping
expendable
his thing.
allies. Like, it's like we're just thrown in here, and here we are and left for dead. And so that kind of gives you a little bit more of like again, Nikolai being not who he normally is in this film. He's more like a good guy. He's more like Mikhail, really.
Basically.
So again, don't really know if that was
Yeah, really,
just what they did.
basically, he's just that.
In my opinion, they should have took Nikolai, and just really made him like the main villain, in this film. Not Nikolai as we got him, but Nikolai as we know him as being, up to no good and in it for himself. So I think that's like the biggest thing too. It's like little things they could have changed that didn't really end up working out. Now, before Asher tracks them down, we do get the scene where we get the Nemesis attack, the first Nemesis attack, and this is where the targets are acquired. So
Yeah,
this
and
is
I
the
actually
cowboy
wrote-
scene.
yeah,
This
I
starts
wrote
with the
some
cowboy
stuff for
scene,
this, too.
the sniper scene.
Yeah, because
Once he grabs the weapons.
You also have the really funny scene where LJ's driving and the hookers are on the side of the street.
Yep.
That's somewhere in between. I think that might be the beginning of this scene. I can't
Right.
remember. I don't remember the exact
Yeah,
order.
because he's on his way to. Once he crashes the car, then
Yeah.
he walks and
he
stumbles
walks
into
and he
there.
stumbles into this part.
Right.
So you got
GTA motherfucker.
yeah,
It's
10 points.
10 points.
I
And he
love
sees,
LJ,
and he
bro.
sees the zombie titties.
LJ's my favorite character in
LJ's
this movie.
fucking awesome in this movie. Really good new character that they added in for sure.
Yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see... If I could say one thing about LJ and this movie, it absolutely makes me want to go find more Mike Epps movies. Because he's a great actor.
Yeah.
I think he would be hilarious in a comedy movie.
Oh yeah, that's pretty much all he does
yeah.
outside. That's why having him in this was very interesting. That they
Yeah.
chose him to like he wanted to get this role because it's like it was different.
He
from
had to
him.
have been a Resident Evil fan.
Right. I was gonna say it was very different from him
Yeah,
because
he's awesome.
yeah, because he's done he's done a bunch of movies. Like it even says here he was in Friday, Next Friday, Dr. Dolittle 2, How High.
Was he in Dr. Dolittle too?
Yeah. He played Sonny.
Oh, okay.
Voice only though, but he did play the voice. So he
He
did
played
that.
one of the animals.
Yeah, so he does a lot of voices too. He did voices in Open Season. But yeah, so he's done like a lot, and plus obviously he's a comedian too, so he's a stand-up comedian, so he does stand-up work. So he has comedic timing. He probably knows how to improvise. He probably knows how, like, you know, make those jokes work. And I think that kind of plays into why we like his character. So yeah, so he does the GTA line, which is fucking awesome. And this is when Nemesis is already on his way to the remaining STARS members. Now, the one thing that is different, because Nemesis is controlled by this computer here in this film and has the robotnik sounds kind of, which I'm not really a fan of. But
yeah, I actually wrote that down.
Yeah, so it's a little weird. But he goes and finds the star, but he's not looking for stars in this film. He just ends up coming across them. Like, so unlike Resident Evil 3, where like he's just specifically after STARS members, it's like that's not his intention here. It's literally for Alice. So where the main, like,
is that how you thought about it? Because I thought about it differently. I thought about it like, so you know how like they activate the Nemesis program and then Dickhead's sitting in the thing and they're like, and he's like, who are they? When he's like looking at them.
Yeah.
And then they say like, basically,
they're the best.
They're the best of the best. There's so many of them in there. They're the best of the best. And he's like, eliminate them or whatever. I took it as in they sent him directions in his robot AI brain to eliminate them. So he specifically is eliminating stars because it says on screen stars.
Right.
And then he says stars. So it's not that he's after stars from the get-go.
Like in the game. Right.
But they definitely kept that Easter egg in because it was
just
like,
for that
we're going to have
scene.
him take out the stars members.
Right. Just for that scene. And then at that point, he's not fixated on Jill after that.
Well,
so
he knows that she's a stars member, though. Because when he sees her and Peyton, he immediately kills them
But the
first.
overall idea of Nemesis is specifically not the same at all in Resident Evil 3. And
it's not the same.
It's not the same.
No, it's not
like, his agenda is literally to push Alice to the peak of her ability. That's literally why he's supposed to be a catalyst to fight Alice.
Yeah, they want him to meet
And
Alice.
that's the only reason why he's really here in this movie. Now, here's the thing. Is he still awesome in the movie? Absolutely. I still like Matt Nemesis. But, you know, his intentions were definitely different. Like, they added the stars in there, but he's not here to really kill stars after the scene. They're just there. And so, yeah, but they do set up these orders in his computer AI system. You see them controlling him, and then they approach. Now, the first thing that they see is, you know, the sniper sees it first. He's like, what the fuck is that? Because you know, LJ's walking and like he snipes him, and he's just like, planning to go around, you know, and he's just like, oh shit. So he runs.
And then he's like drinking in it, and then he sits up and he's like,
and then LJ walks into the thing, and they all point the gun at him, and he's like, "Motherfucker, please, my shit's custom."
Get them.
And then that's when and then they're like, you know, they're all pointing, like getting in position.
Yeah, because they bring him a gun.
Right.
They actually bring
give
him
a
gun
shotgun
because they know he's the only one left.
Right.
And then the stars members bring him a gun, and they're like, and he's like, "Get that shit out of my face. My shit custom."
And he's got the gold fucking Magnum.
Yeah, whatever they are.
Yeah, it definitely is like Magnums, but yeah, like they anticipate Nemesis coming, but they're not ready because especially the guy on the rooftop who gets fucking rocket launched right off the fucking roof, and he's done. So he gets completely obliterated.
Yeah.
Again, doesn't have a name, doesn't really matter. He's just there he's listening to his iPod and he gets fucking wrecked. So that happens.
Yep.
And then Nemesis also has this great Gatling gun, which is an addition to his arsenal in this, which again was only used in the game one other time, and that was in Operation Raccoon City in 2012. So again, it kind of influenced a lot of statues and outfits, and people associated that with Nemesis, his normal arsenal. That's not the case. No. That was only because of the movie. So
his normal arsenal was always just the rocket launcher
and tentacles, which he doesn't have tentacles in this film. So,
well, I mean that's part of him though. Like his normal weapon arsenal,
sure, but they don't. But they still don't use the tentacle in this film. So
at all.
That was the point. Is like they just don't use certain things. But yeah, so they obviously he targets all of them and shoots a Gatling gun right through the fucking building, taking out everyone except LJ, who's just sitting there like, oh,
because he can see that it's not.
Yeah. So he takes them all out and he says stars once. That's the one time you get it. At least he said it one time. We'll take it. He says stars, and
then he rolls up on LJ.
Yep.
And he's like threat level minimum, and then LJ drops the guns, and he's like, threat level eliminated.
He's like, respect.
And then he just
growls
and then
at
Nemesis
him.
just walks away.
Yeah. And then he walks away, and he's just like, what the hell? But also, yeah, the robotic sounds not really a fan of. Doesn't really add anything to it. Like, I don't really know.
I mean,
because when he puts the gun out, it's like,
yeah, it's like
yeah. So
yeah, I thought it was a little bit strange that there's so
cheesy.
many STARS members in this. And
like, what the fuck were they doing at that building? Were they just like fending it off to survive? Like, you would think so, right? With the sniper on the building.
I guess so. I thought maybe I can't remember, but maybe it was a weapons store. I don't remember. I just know that everyone but Jill in this movie is just non-existent as far as STARS members go. And my question here is just like, why couldn't the sniper be Forrest?
Yeah, it's like you had a sniper in there,
Forrest?
just make him Forrest.
Why wasn't other STARS members in this scene? Like, why didn't they bring Kenneth and Richard and all these other people? If they, if they could have brought the Jobber members in this scene to use them to die instead, at least it would be a cool reference for fans. I also find it a little interesting that, like you said, they made Nemesis have like a robotic AI element to his hunting and also his sound effects. I suppose this was done to explain how he identified his targets.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to the original RE3 where it's never explained.
It's not. It's just kind of like...
He just knows.
It's
the STARS.
You think they just have him wired that way for however reason.
However
now,
they do it.
some people look at it as if like, okay, they have to movie-splain it a bit where it's like...
Even
what would
Mr.
drive
X could
him.
do that.
Right. And
The
so
intelligence
I still
factor.
don't think it's a bad take on it because they wanted to give him some kind of like, how is he targeting these people? How does he know who Alice is? Like, and they're watching his vision through a camera. It's literally like they see what he's seeing all the time, which is interesting. Like, it's an interesting take on it, and I didn't mind it. I just think that, like, again, this Nemesis specifically is towards Alice, where in the game Resident Evil 3, which is impossible not to talk about when doing this review because it's basically off of it, is just like the intentions are completely different from BOW to the story to the characters. So the take on Nemesis is a little bit different. Now, I still appreciated him up until this point. And speaking of Resident Evil 3, this is the next little scene is where they are explained on a trolley, little trolley, no reference to anything else, just the fact that it's on a trolley, but it's a little nod to RE3. Yeah. And this is the scene where Alice is talking about Umbrella Corporation, and like you mentioned, Peyton's like, the pharmaceutical company, and she's like, yeah.
There's no way they could get away with that.
And they're going to sanitize the city, and, and she's just like, there's no way. And of course they're just like, cover up, and she's like, they already got a plan. They already got the cut. Like they're already 2 steps ahead. And we're pretty much fucked. She's pretty much said that, like, if we don't get out, like, it's happening. So the clock pretty much starts ticking at this point because they know they're up against an apocalypse, hence the title. It's pretty much there where they have to run. Now, Peyton, again, is still infected at this point. And so, again, they're like, she's like, there's a cure. Like, we can get it. You know what I mean? Like, we can save your friend. Like, there is a cure. So... But again, attaining it, and again, we know that with the Ashford family, that it kind of ties into that because they have access to that kind of thing. Because keeping his daughter, the way that he wants to keep her, he needs all of Umbrella's resources. Now, up until this point, though,
well, this is also the scene where Ashford finally makes contact with
Is it right after the trolley scene, or is it before?
I think it's before the trolley.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
it's the same scene, I think.
Okay.
It's before, because then that's when
he's watching him through the cameras.
Yeah, and then she answers the phone, and then they talk about it on the trolley, and that's what the deal of their lives is.
And he's like, I didn't think you'd ever answer. He's like, he's like, if you want to make it out of the live, I can help you out. So pretty much he's saying, I can guide you through the city.
If you find my daughter, I'll get you out.
Right. So
and then that's when they decide on
that's when their mission becomes survival, and now let's try to get Angie out. So that kind of shows his side of stuff, and he hacks the CCTV system, and he uses the contact of survivors, and he offers to arrange that evacuation in exchange for locating the daughter. So the evacuation's about to happen now. But he also says that with like the kind of like, I don't even know if it's like I don't even know where they are in that tent. Like, they don't even really explain it. I'm assuming it's out of the city, considering they left.
I think it's out of the city.
So it's getting to the point where
it's like they have a little base set up outside that wall.
Right, and he got protection because he's with Umbrella, so he got one of the first calls of like,
Which, like, how did that wall even exist? First of all,
right. But
did
that's
they build that wall when they got there?
but that's what I'm saying too. It's like, and that's what's interesting
You tell me
because
the city has a gate to close it off.
the whole thing, the whole time, and it's also like, because there's that scene where he's just like, you do what you have to do. I'm staying because he's just like we got to get you out of here.
Yeah.
You got to leave, and he's like, I'm staying here. You know what I mean?
Daughter.
So I'm not leaving without my daughter. So again, kind of like a Dario take, but not really. So he's helping them. And at this point, this is the first Alice versus Nemesis fight that gets on from that conversation on the trolley, because they're walking along, and then all of a sudden they see something, and bam, Alice sees it with her supervision.
She
and
just feels it.
She feels it, yeah.
And then Peyton gets blasted away. And then Jill's like, Peyton, and then she starts shooting immediately.
Right.
But because you get to see it, and it identifies Jill and Peyton.
Exactly.
On his little system
on the screen, and it's like,
he's like
X over Peyton, and it's like just Jill. And then she's just like, move, like run, because she's trying to lure Nemesis away from them. So this is when Alice fucking, again, is like, just... She jumps over the fucking fence, and Nemesis is coming after her.
You can obviously tell she's on a cable.
She's on wires, yeah. She jumps over, and then this is the again the whole aspect of like them fighting each other. This is the reason why, because he's pushing Alice to her potential. She's getting thrown into fucking pillars, and chunks of concrete are flying. They fight for a little second,
and
close
then
quarters.
she kind of fucks him, or he kind of fucks her up a little bit, and then she runs from him.
Right.
After she thinks that they have,
he throws her into the wall, and then she runs into the school building.
Because then it's just Jill,
or not the school building, but like it's like
she runs into basically the newsroom.
The newsroom.
It looks kind of like the newsroom.
Right.
It's not probably the
newsroom. She jumps through the window, and he's fucking coming through with the Gatling gun.
Because it's got a mail chute.
Right, and so she's in the hallway. She has the double pistol, and she's like, lean back. And she just shoots him with the fucking Uzis in the legs. It's fucking.
Well, you forgot. I don't know if you forgot. You might have said it and I missed it. But did you talk about her shooting the wall? How she shoots the hole in the wall as she runs to it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was
yeah,
just saying. She's like, I was like, bro, there is only... What is that movie? Oh, Underworld.
Yeah.
When she shoots the hole in the ground.
It like adds that like ridiculous, like, this wouldn't happen.
That's
so
what it
perfectly.
reminded me of.
It like times up perfectly. And then she dodges his fucking laser sight and then goes down the chute, and literally he shoots, so he goes down the chute. Nemesis is like, oh, you're down here? Fucking
she falls
shoots
into the plastic.
Shoots the fucking rocket. It just goes down.
Dude, she's in
an industrial fucking dumpster.
This is the camera, right? This is the camera. This is like the chute. So like towards you guys is the chute. Nemesis just goes. He just pops in. He's like,
yeah.
And just like shoots it, and then she fucking leans the plastic trash can over.
Yeah, exactly.
And it takes the rock. Get the fuck out of here.
And while she's going down, she fucks up her hand.
Oh,
it gets caught on like the metal.
Yeah, her arm, I think. Right.
Yeah.
She like gets ripped.
It's
or
like
something.
And her hand gets like.
And she breaks her finger.
She has to break her finger
back.
But yeah, she avoids Nemesis because he just thinks that she dies from that point. A really cool. I mean, it's a very fast-paced scene. We kind of talked about stuff being cut really fast.
Yeah.
This is one of those where it's like she gets thrown, and then Nemesis picks it up, and the camera's like whoop whoop whoop, like it's like back and forth.
And then Nemesis jumps up before this and breaks
the car, goes over there.
Like,
yeah. So again, it's kind of testing the duality of both sides of the power, right? You got this Nemesis BOW power mixed with this superhuman Alice whatever,
who's stronger is basically
right.
What
and he's just
for.
like, and they're just sitting back watching this, like, this is what we wanted. Like, we worked on Alice for this reason, to see this power scale, this power level, right? And so at that point, she breaks her, snaps her fingers back into place, and Nemesis goes on his way. Now, this is when they're in search for Angela, because they now have to go to the school, but that's not before Jill is hotwiring the car.
Yeah, with
and the reporter.
They're the only two left.
And they're the only two left from that little scuffle of Nemesis kind of invading. And Peyton comes back alive, and she does what she promised.
Yep.
She was the one to put him down.
Payoff.
Nemesis turned him, essentially putting the nail in the coffin, but then she had to put the extra nail in the coffin to stop him from being a zombie any longer.
She promises her one, I will take care of it if I have to.
Right.
It comes to fruition.
Yep.
And it's the only thing in the movie Alice doesn't steal from her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a moment that Jill has where
Yeah.
it's just Jill because Alice is over there dealing with Nemi, and she puts him down. And again, really good scene. I did like that.
I did like it too.
Um,
And I like that Jill was hot wiring the car, because me and you talked about this when we were watching it during the commentary. But I like how it's kind of a nod to her being the master of unlocking, because technically to start a car in that time you needed a key. Typically there were probably remote starts then, but like they weren't really common, especially in trucks like that. Or so like she goes and she unlocks the car basically with the hot wire. So that was a cool nod too, and I liked it because you don't really ever see our characters doing stuff like that is typical in a zombie apocalypse. Most of our characters are just like over the top crazy shit.
Yeah, exactly. So it kind of puts a human spin on it, and when Valentine and Morales go and pick up LJ because they pick him up on the thing, he's like, "Look, I haven't been bit anything."
Oh, LJ runs up to the truck.
Yeah, he runs
like,
up.
I haven't been bit or anything.
Yeah. So he jumps in, and that's when they're en route to the school to find Angie. So
and they
this
catch
is the
him
big
up on
thing.
it too, because then he's like, "All right, bet." And he's like, "Yeah, I got you."
Yeah.
He didn't say bet back then, but he would have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if it was today. But so that happens, and there's the scene where they're walking into the school, and Morales, the reporter's like, "I never used a gun before." She's like, "It's easy, just point and squeeze the trigger, and aim for the head. Try to aim for the head." So they separate, which I think is the dumbest fucking thing they could have done, especially when you have people that are incompetent of being able to fend for themselves.
No, to be honest, it really did make Jill look kind of dumb.
Right. Because it's like, why would you give? Why would you give trust into someone who
also
shoots from a fucking camera the whole time?
Also, LJ, I could go with you.
Yeah.
He's
It's
like,
no,
"I can go with
actually, no. You should split
And then
up
she's
and look for
like,
this.
and then she goes to follow LJ, and she hands her a gun, and she's like, "3rd floor,"
Yeah,
and he's like, or 2nd floor, whatever she says to her, and then she's just like, "What?"
yeah.
And
what?
then it just cuts.
I'm
It
on
is
my
pretty
own.
dumb.
Yeah, and this kind of leads to the scene where she goes into the classroom, and the good old zombie children come and obviously have her for dinner, and so she is eaten alive with the zombie children. Always good to see. Some more of a variant of zombies, and why not zombie children? We saw it in Night of the Living Dead in the original, and now we see it in Resident Evil Apocalypse, which, again, is realistic because that would happen to the children as well. And you knew that they all weren't going to make it out of school before something else happened, because the only person that was given the heads up was Angie. And so when Angie comes out, and because Angie's hiding in that room, so when Jill goes into the room and she finds her, of course the camera is in there.
Yeah, and I actually have a note that I wanted to say about this scene, because I really like the fact that you get to see zombie children. Because in Resident Evil as a whole, you never get to see zombie children. So it was, they're there.
Right.
They've got to be there. But I don't know if it's because of Japanese censorship laws and stuff like that. You're really not, even in America, really, it's not too common for video games to have that kind of stuff in it.
Right.
Even in like The Last of Us, you don't really see that ever.
Yeah, you
They
see,
kind of
you
avoid
see,
it.
you see Sam as a zombie in Last of Us,
Yeah.
and he's a kid, so
Yeah.
you do see it.
But it's rare. It's
Right,
like really
right.
rare.
And at that point, it makes sense almost because, again, that's like really post-apocalyptic, where most
Yeah.
people aren't even like those kind of people at that age bracket are gone because they can't survive.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a really cool effect, and again, it kind of like the whole camera recording her getting eaten, because it's like she's been recording the whole time, and that's
Which
just
is a
like,
very tropey thing.
very
to do,
tropey
but
thing.
It's cool.
That it just kind of shows that like
she gets to be the star at the end of her show.
yeah, essentially. That I kind of like that little sense of humor there. But the guy who played Nikolai, and his name is Zach Ward. He played the bully in Christmas Story, who Ralphie had to beat the shit out of with the ginger. That's him.
That's
the same guy. So if you guys didn't know that, that's a little fun fact there.
What a crazy connection.
Right, and everyone's seen that movie, so everyone knows
my brother
the reference.
watches that on repeat every Christmas.
Yeah.
He just watches it.
Right.
Like, I swear, 38 times.
Holy shit.
It's just on all day.
Yeah,
He just
because
watches it.
USA always runs it and
Yeah.
all these other things. It's cool. I mean, you know, some people they get older and they try different movies and stuff like that. It's interesting, again, what kind of led him to this movie. Sometimes they do it because they like it. Sometimes they do it because of a paycheck, whatever the case may be.
I would like to believe that most of the actors in this movie were Resident Evil fans. The only one I'd have trouble seeing is maybe Jill's character, and like
Alice. Mila Jovovich.
Well,
obviously.
Mila's been on record as saying she's a very long time gamer.
Right.
So I don't know about that. I can't speak for that because we have seen interviews where she plays the games.
Right. And she's not saying tech on. I mean, I would
no,
believe
she's not saying tech on.
I would believe Mila Jovovich before Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah,
so
I
that's
mean,
the only thing. That is history right
The
there.
only thing I could give her and Vin Diesel, credit for is the fact that GameFAQs might not have been around when they were playing video games, but that's it. Yeah, I think that,
Do you like the school scene overall, though? With
I
the
love
dogs
the school
and everything.
scene
They had to throw the dogs in there.
because you also have LJ meets Carlos first.
Elvis!
Elvis, which is in the cut version.
Yeah.
But I love that scene. LJ's fucking...
I
You know
see
what-
you, mother,
You
and
know
it's
what
the
else
skeleton.
I just realized? I don't think we ever see LJ shoot. Ever. In the whole movie.
No.
I don't think he shoots. But
No.
he's like... But he fucking... This is an inside joke between me and my old buddy, Jay. But... When we used to watch this movie, we used to watch Apocalypse all the time. I love when LJ is in the chemistry class and he walks in, or the lab or whatever, the science
He
room.
sees the skeleton.
And he's like, he opens the closet and it pops out and he's
He's
like,
like,
ah!
He's like, I see you,
He's
mother.
like, and he puts the gun in his eye.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
I see you, mother. And it's like,
from
behind, right? We always used to laugh because he looks, the zombie looks exactly like our music teacher. And if you pause it and you slow it down, there's a single frame after he runs where he gets shot. There's a bullet hole in his head and he's just like, and we always used to pause it when it was just like, there's Mr. DeBow. Or,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I won't say, I already said his name, but I won't say it again. But I was like, there's Mr. DeBow. And it's like, I see you, mother. Ah! And then he shoots him.
No,
And
that's
then
a great scene.
Dude, he turns around in the extended cut, guys. You got to see the extended cut. You can't find it anywhere for less than $600, but you got to see it.
You got to see it.
He turns around and he's like, and he sees Carlos and he's like, Elvis!
And it's funny because he's just sitting there like with the hair and he's like sweating because he's all like infected and
he's
shit.
like-
Yeah, it's just funny, man. Like
I love LJ.
that started the I always like the chemistry between him and Oded because like
Yeah.
I feel like that again is something that I liked from here onward. Even though again
Yeah,
like
man.
Carlos was a little bit more serious in this film, but
Elvis.
But yeah, no, that's a great scene, and the dogs obviously come in because you got to throw the dogs in. They look great.
They're
the
good
makeup
boys.
looks great.
Yeah, they're prosthetic. They actually put makeup on real dogs.
And Jill tries to burn them at this point with the
Yeah.
gas, because there's so many at that point. And this is another scene that unfortunately gets kind of taken from Alice because as she's trying
No,
to
take it from Jill.
taken from
Oh, taken from. I get you. I understand what you're
yeah.
saying.
So basically,
Alice
Alice
takes it.
steals the show and
This
takes the
is
fire
also-
blanket and puts it over her.
This is also just dirty. This is fucked up. Jill has this awesome setup. She lights the match. She's like,
She's about to throw it in the air
She
while the gas
throws
is going.
it, and then it goes out, and they show Jill look at it and go, like, oh shit. And then Alice is just like,
Smoking the cigarette.
and so I flicked it. Dave Chappelle, I flicked it. She flicks it.
Goes through the window.
They come through the window, and then it hits the gas, and it just blows
She
up.
takes the fire blanket.
She takes the fire blanket. We're just recapping at this point. Fuck you. We just take the fucking fire blanket. She wraps it around Angie. Jill gets blown away into
Yep.
like some RE2 remake shit
Yep.
where Leon gets thrown into the car, which was an awesome addition. But like they throw into the car, bro. It's dirty. It's dirty. They this was the last straw. This was Jill's last moment. This is the only other moment she really gets.
That's true.
This is the last moment for Jill, and then she just they're just like, Jill's gonna do something now. It was Alice.
It's all about Alice.
And we're coming for Claire later.
And I think that's a common theme at this point because we're like midway through. It's like, yeah, they really did her dirty constantly, in this. And it's just like, it sucks that they're not using her as much as you would like, as I would like, as maybe you would like, people listening or watching. Some people are Alice fans or Alice stans, whatever the case may be. But I just kind of wish that Jill had more moments that weren't kind of taken away from her in that case. But yeah, so
Jack is in the chat. Shout out to Jack.
Shout out to Jack.
He said LJ's custom guns, just so you guys know, are 44 Desert Eagles.
So
They're
he,
just
so he's got
custom
gold
Yeah.
44D Eagles. There we go. Thank you for that clarification. But yeah, and then of course during the dogs, let's not forget where Nikolai tries to save him too. Tries to save her, and then
Nikolai's
she's like,
like,
Nikolai
"I got
at
this
your
bitch."
service, and then I got this bitch.
Yeah.
So basically he dies by a dog, which again, it's Nikolai, it's not really Nikolai, and they did him dirty, so that leaves Carlos essentially.
Yeah.
But that also gives to the other scene where they're walking, and when Carlos finally meets Alice and he's with LJ, and then he sees his dead comrade, he starts coughing, and she's like, how long have you been infected? He's like 4 hours or whatever. And then he's like, what the, LJ's like, what the fuck? Like, I'm around all these infected people. And that's kind of when you realize that, with Angie, she has the antivirus. She has the cure to prolong the infection. And again, that's given to her because that's exactly what she needs to stay alive and have that connection to what to what her father was trying to pretty much prevent all of this happening, because he was just trying to do it to help her. So she uses some of the the serum that's there. Alice uses some of it on Carlos, and Dr. Ashford gives Alice the location to the extraction point where the helicopter awaits.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the final area of where they have to make. So they go to the rendezvous point, but of course they're ambushed by Umbrella. So the thing here is them, finding the cure, but also trying to get out in time, because again, the missile is here and the clock is still ticking. So they have all this stuff going on, and there's been, again, kind of like a revolving door of like, okay, can I trust these people? Can I not? Like, there's constant stuff that's like, everyone's kind of losing hope at this point. And with them going to the site, Alice takes out the men. She runs down the fucking building and tries to come up behind him. And she also stops a sniper from sniping him on the rooftop. From there, they go to the rendezvous point, and that's where they go and they have the extraction. But again, there's a bunch of Umbrella soldiers that are there that are extracting, trying to extract the great Timothy Kane, because he's there. That's pretty much where he is. And runs down the building, takes out the soldiers, and they try to go on the helicopter, and he's like, we've been expecting you. And of course, Timothy Kane ties them up and tries to have Alice and Nemesis fight again. And this Alice and Nemesis fight for the second time is he's pretty much forcing her to fight him, because during this scene, this is where Ashford dies. Dr. Ashford gets shot by Timothy Kane. He takes him out because he's like, if you're not going to do what I want you to do, you're going to fight it. And she says no. He turns around, shoots her. Angie gets upset and immediately takes him out. So that's the end of Dr. Ashford trying to do everything. Now, he did help. His character kind of played a role up until this point. And I think like they did a good job when his character was alive to make you somewhat feel for him, because you knew all his research really was just for his daughter. He wasn't trying to hurt anybody. And, he did make an attempt to, save everyone. You know what I mean? So him trying to, again, push Alice and Nemesis in this scene where they're fighting and they're pushing each other to, the max, pretty much.
He basically drops the sauce on her.
Yeah.
This is why I want to see which of you is greater.
Yeah, I want to see which you is more powerful. This is kind of like the evolution of everything. So that's the thing. He kills him, forces Alice, and the thing is that he reveals as well that the T virus, again, that's kind of like what's going on with Alice, and again, gaining the upper hand here. She gets the fight scene, and normally the interesting thing about this fight scene, and me and John talked about this, is that it's kind of like Mortal Kombat, because they're trying to make it to where like he puts down the gun. So it's interesting because he puts down the gun and he's like Like Nemesis is just like, let's fucking go.
Yeah,
like, let's
'cause
fight.
he does punch in the original
He does.
game.
So, but this is kind of like more like a boxing
And they
match.
walk around each other.
Right. And he's like ready. So
Yeah.
it's like, again, that control is there. So she's kicking him. He's punching. There's
She
that
seems
back
to be
and forth.
beating him up.
Right.
She seems to be winning. He rips the metal scrap off of the pole.
He starts using weapons.
Starts
and
using
then
weapons. And then
Timothy's like,
Timothy
all right, I'll throw you something.
gives her batons to keep it even. And it feels a lot like Mortal Kombat. And then obviously, just like Nemesis has shown to do so many times in the original game, he causes his own downfall.
Yes.
Because when he rips the thing off of it, he creates an opening for her to push him into the spike
Right through his back.
that he creates.
So
and
she
then
kicks. She does the roundhouse kicks
a
constantly.
couple of
Boom,
times, yeah.
Boom.
he puts him in it, and then she hits him, and she hits him. That's when she realizes it's Clueless Matt.
Yep. She realizes that this is Matt. That she is a pretty much, fucking up and gaining the upper hand, and the experiment has overtaken him, and that's who he is. And even though it's not really reminiscent of him, there's still something inside that resonates. So she, while it's impaled, she's like, hitting him, and she's just like, she gets the flashback of the doors opening,
Him.
and she's like, Matt,
on the
yeah, him
table.
on the table. Oh, goodbye.
He's just like,
I got credit for 2 seconds in this movie. But yeah, so she gets him stuck on the spike, and that's when she realizes, because she's like, finish him, what are you doing? Finish him. And then she's just like, we're just experiments. Like, you're just gonna toss it by the side. Like, you don't care about this thing. Like, you don't care about anything.
Exactly.
And Nemesis is like overhearing this of like, oh, people don't care about me, but I'm Matt Nemesis. And so basically he gets the
you
gist.
see his eye go. His eye's like,
He's like, I realize
it
now.
widens, and he's like, my name is Matt, and I remember everything.
And so he turns on Major Kane and attacks the Umbrella Soldiers, takes the Gatling gun and starts shooting, protecting Alice at this point, remembering, like, whether
they kind of just walk away from them.
he does.
And then Nemesis just gets off the thing and then just like walks away.
And then when
it's
she's
really weird.
Right. And then when she's taking out the helicopter, he comes out of nowhere and blocks himself, like when she's shooting the helicopter, and then she shoots it, and then I believe he rockets it.
Yeah, he rockets
and
it.
then it just it's all like shrapnel everywhere and everything's exploding, and then he gets in front of her to protect her and gets taken out by the helicopter. And that's Nemesis pretty much gets killed by a taken down helicopter. I really don't really think I think they wanted to be more like that because she wouldn't deliberately kill him. He was going to die anyway if the nuke went off, but I guess they wanted to make it more of like,
well, he
was
over.
doing it protecting.
Matt took over.
He took over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was doing it to protect her. And
If
he
that
went
was
out
the
to
real
sacrifice.
Nemesis, that helicopter wouldn't have been enough to kill him. He would have mutated further.
Exactly.
So, but we don't see that because then we're thrown right into, just a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I mean the helicopters are sent out for them, and then after that scene, she runs through, or during the scene, I believe it's right before, she runs in the hallway, and it's the Code Veronica thing
scene.
where you're shooting a helicopter.
Yeah,
and
it's
you're running
right before
in front of
this.
the bullets.
It's right before this. Yeah,
and then she drops the weapons, and they're like, "Drop your weapon and surrender." And then she drops it, goes to the floor, grabs it. It's Dustin's favorite scene.
Yeah.
Shoots the barrel.
No,
not even the barrel.
No,
That's
shoots
Code Veronica.
them.
She shoots them.
Yeah, she
Code
shoots
Veronica,
them.
she shoots the barrel. This,
Yeah.
she just shoots it. So it's right from Code Veronica, but it's not as cool. Claire did it better.
No, it's pretty much it's very similar. It's almost shot for shot.
Right. So helicopters, and then that's when, right after that, the helicopter gets taken out, and then Nemesis dies. And then it's time to take out the trash, because you got fucking, you got Timothy Kane still chilling there, and he's on the extraction helicopter, and everyone else is ready to leave. The pilot's still there, and that's when he's just like, "You're not going to change anything." You know what I mean? This is, you're not going to make it out of the city alive, and they drop his ass basically. So as the detonation's about to happen, they get overrun because all the zombies are starting to find out their location, and they end up dropping his ass out of the helicopter as they escape and breaking his legs. And he tries to make a little desperate attempt to stay alive by shooting. And then, of course, the best thing that happens is Dr. Ashford comes back as a zombie, and he's the one that actually puts the final bite into him, where he realizes he can't kill himself because he wasted all of his fucking ammo, and he can't take himself out to go peacefully. He suffers, and that's kind of what they wanted to. They wanted to take that, take that revenge aspect out on him and make him suffer like he did everyone else and kill, again, he killed Ashford. So you kind of see him get that, that final, okay, this guy's going down. Even though he was a forgettable villain, you still kind of felt that fulfillment of like, that motherfucker's dead and he died in the worst way possible. And you see all the zombies kind of horde around him as they are flying up. It's obvious CGI, but again, what are you going to do? It's there, this era. And you see them going up, and the most iconic part of the trilogy is kind of brought up here with this scene, and the missile being, you see the missile actually coming out for launch. So it's already en route. And it hits, and there's a big shockwave, and the helicopter goes down. And of course, the big thing here is Alice actually sacrificing herself to save Angie and gets stabbed by the piece of shrapnel metal that comes loose when the shockwave hits. And that's the one thing that I liked about how this particular scene is portrayed in this movie, because that is how it would go down. It wouldn't really go down like it did in 3 or 3 Remake, where they would just fly away and have like more of like a little, it's like, no, if you're not that far away like that, there's no way that isn't taking you down.
Yeah.
So
I think in Remake 3, they did a better job of showing distance and the shaking, because the helicopter really did get fucked up.
It did.
But
the realistic approach,
the original RE3, they were really close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the realistic approach, like your helicopter
they could see the missile pass overhead to the city. So, like, they've got to be a pretty decent distance away.
Yeah.
But in this, they're really close. And they go down.
Yeah, and they go down in the Arklay Mountains, and so you don't know what's happening.
No.
You just see a shaking. Jill puts her, head between her legs like you're supposed to when you're going down. Shit's going crazy. Carlos is like, we're going down. Brace for impact, and it cuts to the Arklay Mountains, and then you see Ian Glenn's character, Alexander Isaacs, and he lifts up the sheet, and then you see Alice dead.
Yeah.
You see her body burnt and dead, and you're like, oh, well, Alice is dead. That's what you think.
Yeah.
No, because they actually save her brain, and it cuts to a laboratory. And this laboratory has...
Which I did want to shout out.
Sure.
The chapter is called Through the Looking Glass.
It is.
Which is an Alice in Wonderland reference.
Yes, it is.
Which is funny because her name is Alice. And I wonder how much of that was intentional.
And right before this scene, you get a little clip of the Raccoon City incident on the news, people talking about it happening, but then they say that...
The cover-up.
It's fake. All that footage from the reporter, it's fake, because Jill takes that camera and tries to probably tell the truth. Like, you can tell that she probably turned that in somewhere and they didn't believe her, kind of like Arklay to Raccoon.
Yeah, and Jill and Carlos are being arrested and
questioned.
questioned.
They're being questioned by authorities, obviously told to probably keep hush-hush about it. You're very similar to like Leon after the events of RE2. Like there's that like, okay, we're going to take you into questioning.
Yeah.
I like that a little bit, that they played around with that. And then they also said it at the reason why the stuff happened, it was because of a chemical spill from a chemical plant. So they had a plant already of like what they were going to use for the cover up. And again, it kind of wraps it up nicely of like kind of what fills in the gaps. And then it cuts to, Alice's new body in the test tubes with her, original brain, because they were salvaged her brain essentially. And as we know, this kind of starts the theme of the Alice clones that we see, especially in the next film. The next film, like they dump those clones like they're like trash. Like you literally see. That's when they really started to use CG a lot more in these films, was going forward, because obviously it jumps from one time period to the next. But it goes to her in the test tube, and that is when you see they drain the water, and she comes out and she's all confused, and she doesn't remember at first, and you're like, well, do you remember your name? And she's like, my name, I don't know. And then
she can't even talk.
She can't even talk. Doesn't even know what's going on.
She tries to say pen. She's like,
a pen.
Penis.
And then it's a penis. It's mine.
Touch it.
I'm Isaac. But yeah, though there's that, and then they have a flash of like everything cutting really quick, and she's starting to remember.
As the guy's watching the monitor.
Because the one thing that they kept showing throughout the film was her being in the hospital bed, and she remembers a vivid memory of Dr. Isaac kind of leaning over, like looking like, like working. So like she always had that image, and I'm assuming that when she saw him, she remembered, okay, like she saw Isaac and she was like that. She literally was a part of the experiment, like when I got experimented on. So that happens, and she remembers everything, and she's like, tell me your name. Do you tell me your name? He's like, my name is Alice, and I remember everything. And fucking takes the pen, goes up to the doctor's eye, doesn't hit it, and then just goes boom, and just fucking
starts fucking everybody up.
Fucking everyone up. Guy's tasering her. She fucking throws it back at him. He's like, oh!
Yeah, his
So
hair stands up.
Yeah, that's a funny scene. I always like that scene. Even throws fucking Isaacs into the fucking like glass. Fucking throws his ass immediately. So again, making an escape. Then you get this weird shot that it's always silly.
I remember everything shot.
No, it's the
but it's the shot where you first see what she really remembers.
Yeah,
which is that she's got telekinesis powers.
And she's like, all right, I'm gonna use the telekinetic abilities to look at you through a screen and make your eyes bleed.
Dude, she's stronger.
And that's what she does.
Think about this. In this scene,
it's so funny, man.
She is stronger than Mewtwo. Think about this. Mewtwo crushes cars with his telekinesis. He could crush a bus with his telekinesis.
Yeah.
She looks at a camera and somehow kills the guy on the other side. The fuck is that? It's like you got everybody watching this video right now. You're looking at me, looking right at me. Now you're dead. How does that feel? It doesn't feel very well, does it? It doesn't feel really well. We're getting photobombed by James.
Oh my god.
James looks into the camera.
I'm so happy I have that footage. He's like looking at the camera like,
you got to put it in there.
Oh my god.
You got to put it in there.
Again, it's showing you the power. Like you tell Anderson was writing a script like, we got to make Alice really strong. We have to show her power. Let's have her look at a surveillance screen, overtaking every screen and then making the guy's eyes bleed. And it's like,
only thing I could think of.
Where did you get that from, Paul?
Was that because she's robotic? She like now because she has like the umbrella eyes and everything, she could look into the surveillance camera and look into its circuitry and trace back to the monitor to look into that to expose some type of. It doesn't make sense. Just fuck them. It doesn't make sense. You can't make sense of it.
Now it's interesting though because the big thing here is that like,
is she fucking psychic? Does she even reuse this power?
Well, that's the thing is that they're making it seem like the end of this film. Because she goes outside the building and they all, they roll up on her and they,
Wait a second.
They point the guns at her and then they let her in the car. But the thing is with this scene is they make it seem like she's being controlled like how Nemesis was being controlled. And she has this umbrella kind of like, through her vision and stuff like that. But they don't. And the satellite in the sky and everything.
But they can't control her.
But it's like it's almost like they can't control her. And then in Extinction, it's retconned. All of this whole ending is completely gone because Carlos is in there and they're all for Umbrella. They're working for Umbrella now. Carlos, LJ is driving the car, Jill and Angie, they're all in Umbrella gear. So they're all a part of whatever this kind of like cover-up story is. It's completely irrelevant at the end of this film. Like it happens in this film, but it doesn't because Jill's gone in the next movie. Angie's gone in the next movie. You kind of can't talk about this scene without talking about the next one because this actually means nothing. Even as a standalone, it still doesn't really make sense because...
I think this could be just me. I thought you were talking about Extinction, and I was like, what?
No. I'm talking about this.
Yeah, this movie, when they're all in the... I think it's fake. I think they broke in to get her out. That's what I think. But they don't explain it.
But how do they have...
They have
how
fake
do they have
IDs.
authority? But like they have authority access and everything.
Fake IDs, bro.
Right.
I think they broke in.
And then Isaac was like, let them go
because he's recording everything she sees, so he wants her to go.
Yeah, and he wants to see what she's capable of now.
So I think that they broke in because when he looks at the one guy looks at the card, he's like, and then he looks up and he's like, I don't know you. And
I never thought of it like that.
I'm pretty sure they broke in.
Okay.
I don't think they're working for Umbrella.
Right.
So I don't think that's retconned. I think they just broke in to get her out of there.
Right.
Because they knew where she was being kept.
Is Jill and Angie's whereabouts because
that gets retconned.
That gets completely retconned because Jill didn't return. And
Jill wants to go pop out a baby.
She got pregnant for the next film, wasn't able to come back, so they kind of wrote her out of the script, which again, they just never really explain it. This becomes a more common thing
After this
going
movie,
forward of
yeah.
things not being explained and you wondering what the hell's happening.
Extinction's
But
not too bad with it, but then like after Extinction, it gets really bad,
definitely. But yeah, so and then they're just like, "What did they do to you?" And then she just looks out the window and doesn't say anything. And because Annie's just like, "Thank God you're all right," and
Yeah.
she just looks out the window, and then it pans out. You see the fucking the rebuilt city or whatever it is, like the new area that they're in, another city, and it pans
They're
back.
in Detroit.
They're in Detroit. You're
They're,
right.
They named it Detroit.
They named it
yeah.
Detroit. So they're in
It's actually
Detroit.
Detroit.
You see the city. It pans out.
Yeah.
And then you see the Umbrella satellite as if they're still controlling. They still have influence and power. And then it cuts. And that is
Kill Switch Engage.
Kill Switch Engage, End of Heartache, which is an amazing song. That's how I
Yes.
found out about Kill Switch, is through this movie. And also a really good soundtrack overall. It's a really good metal soundtrack and a good score overall. No, man. I mean, that's Resident Evil Apocalypse. Now, the main thing we're going to talk about now is positives and negatives. Now, how we kind of feel. We kind of talked about how we felt about each scene and some certain problems we have. But to kind of give a definitive podcast review, we're going to list off some of our positives and negatives.
Yeah,
And
let's start with our positives.
Let's start with the positives, and we'll start with you, John, and then
Okay.
I'll go, and then I'll go first on the negatives, and then you go.
So overall, for Resident Evil Apocalypse, I think that the cinematography is great. The soundtrack is great. I think Whit did a great job for his directorial debut. I think the set pieces are phenomenal, and I think the acting was above average for the rest of this franchise. I would say as a collective, this is probably the film that has the best acting of the 6 films, and I think it has the most cheesy popcorn fun plot to follow up until a certain point. For my personal takeaways as far as the cons go, I think that the lack of STARS members was a real blow to this movie. I think that LJ could have been used more because LJ was my favorite actor in this movie. I think Mike did a phenomenal job acting as LJ. I think the tone of horror action blend with some comedy relief, I think is not a negative of this movie. I think that's actually a strength. So I did want to add that to my pro list. My other 2 cons I would have to say is the lead villain is really forgettable and shitty. I don't really think he's a good villain. I think that there was a better villain in the first film, and that's hard because the first film's also not really a great, villain. Dr. Isaacs definitely is a better villain as well, even though he's a little cheesy, especially when we get into predictive combat software. So the lack of characters in this movie from the game standpoint, I think is one of the major flaws of Apocalypse. However, the most unquestionably terrible decision for this movie was the fact that they continuously steal from Jill. They basically give us one of our favorite characters and then don't let her do anything. I will never forgive them for that. The only other thing I would say, and this just occurs to me as I'm looking at my notes here, but we only got Lickers and Zombies and Nemesis. Again, they really didn't go too heavy on the bioweapons. I'm sure a lot of fans were wondering where Hunters were. We did get Cerberus dogs as well, but the dogs, if you take the dogs and the zombies and the Lickers from the first movie, since they all appeared in the first movie, the only new bioweapon we got was Nemesis. We could have gotten one more bioweapon. I think that would have helped to really round things out. I think Hunters would have been a perfect addition for this film, or Brainsuckers, but I personally would have went Hunter. And that's really all I have to say. I think overall, I really like this movie. I think it's the best one in the Resident Evil 6 film series, mostly by Paul W.S. Anderson. I think Whit definitely deserves credit for the king of Resident Evil live action films so far. We'll see if he gets dethroned when Welcome to Raccoon City finally comes out. And I think that's about all I have to say about Apocalypse. For you guys out there who really like numbers, I'd probably give this film, one for the Resident Evil series film franchise, not like against other films, just within an inclusiveness of this. I'd probably give it like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10.
Okay, that's fair.
I'd probably give it about that. For these 6 films. Now, would another film I give an 8 to would be, The Hobbit: Unexpected Journey. Is it as good as that? No. They don't have a correlation together.
Right, we're just reviewing it
But-
in a bubble that is
But
already...
the bubble is Resident Evil. I give this. I think I'll be generous. I think I give it like an 8.
Okay, yeah. I mean, for me, the positives would be, I think that the action in this one was definitely turned up more. So I did like the action elements in this film. I did appreciate the balance of that and some of the horror elements. So it was definitely more than the first film. I thought the cast did a really good job as well. Really lending to each other's chemistry, even though, again, they weren't fully our characters all the time that we know and love. But they did work well. I also thought the Raccoon City set pieces were great. I love the Canada shots that they did. I thought Canada is a great backdrop for this. I thought it worked well. And I also thought that it was, cool to see a lot of those elements pulled from the intro shots and stuff from Resident Evil 3. I also really like the fact that there was Nemesis in here. I like the fact that it was my favorite BOW of all time on the big screen, something we'll never see again. So it's just really cool to see a game that resembles Resident Evil 3 in this particular way. And that was always something that was really, that kind of stood out for me. And I really just like the cheesy, fun action that's in this movie. Even if you don't take it really seriously, it's very fast, too. It's like a really fast hour and a half. It gets in, gets out, does what it has to do. It doesn't overstay its welcome or anything like that. So in that regard, it's really good. And the pacing is really good, too, because it doesn't really take so much time to really get into the nitty-gritty. And it gets right into it. Now, the big thing with the negatives here, and for kind of like what John said, I thought the taking away of Jill Valentine and this not being her story is my biggest critique, because this Raccoon City escape is really supposed to be on Jill. And now that they had Alice, and there was no way they were making this film without Alice and without a storyline, like that was already set in place. But it would have been cool to see more of a balance of other characters used in the game, and to use some of those names and some of the people that we recognize, because you had all these other characters there that could have easily been replaced with characters that we know and love. It's very strange why they went that particular route. But again, that kind of goes into the differences between the games and the movies. They kind of just, switch things up all the time, and we would only see that done more and more past this movie, especially in Extinction. So I wish that they had that. I also wish the variety of BOWs, like John also said, I agree, is another negative point for me. I wanted to see more. I wanted to see crows. I wanted to see hunters. I wanted to see spiders. It's in the city, so there's more, opportunities to play around with that whole idea of it being kind of like an infected playground of different POWs and enemies. That's kind of how the games felt, and they didn't really capture it that much. They did fixate a lot on Nemesis and Alice being the, that's why Nemesis is there. So that's a little nitpick of mine, where he's not just there to take out all the remaining people that are still alive, which could have been a better take. Kind of like with 3, it was STARS members, but could have been a different take with Nemesis this time around. And the other negative thing is really like the villain is just weak. I just wasn't a fan. I do think Dr. Isaacs is a better actor and a little bit more of a better villain in the following films, to a certain extent. Not saying that he's way better of a villain, because he gets to the point where he's over the top, but just kind of very forgettable with Timothy Kane and Major Timothy Kane. Let's not forget. But that is the other downside, is that just very forgettable villain. But the other action and the fun elements kind of make up for that. There's plenty of B movies that I like that aren't perfect, but the villains are never that memorable, but you still show up for the action and that's kind of thing. So again, gives it a balance, right? But those are kind of like my positives and negatives for this film. Overall, it's my favorite in the franchise and the films. I have nostalgia with this film, but I also look at it from a very fun, a very fun film, something that, I remember vividly seeing in the theaters, being really excited to see my favorite game of all time on the big screen. And I know I'll never get something that, is like this, because obviously they're not doing this in Welcome to Raccoon City. They're showing the mansion and the city all at the same time. They're not going to do Nemesis. They're not going to do Jill the way that they did. So I just like the fact that this kind of encapsulates a time where the only thing that was out was Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Survivor, Code Veronica, and we had Remake and Zero, and we had Outbreak, of course, but that was it, and that's what they were drawing from. So you'll never really get that again because now we have remakes and everything else that kind of throws more shit kind of in the mix of them to pull from, and even if they pull from that, because we won't know until this new one comes out what they're pulling from correctly and if they even give a damn. So I still like this. I just think it's the best because I think it's the best in this bulk of films for the franchise because it always entertains me, and it's one of those films that like I can always go back and watch, and it takes me right back to the mid 2000s and that time in filmmaking and that era.
Definitely, I agree.
This and like Shaun of the Dead and like a lot of like movies like that were around 2004, 2005. I just remember that era in gaming. I remember that era in anime and movies and just like a lot of forms of media because that's when I was really going in on like getting more stuff, collecting more stuff, like understanding how I can, like buy this movie, buy that. Like there was just more of like an understanding. And I think like with this film, again, being a fan of RE3 growing up, it was just cool to see some kind of rendition. It's not perfect by any means, but I'll fucking take it. So all in all, that is our review for Resident Evil Apocalypse. Thank you for listening to the show. And thank you for listening to the commentary if you listen to it. And we aren't done because we're going to be doing Resident Evil Extinction in a couple weeks here. So stay tuned for our review of Resident Evil Extinction. And the goal, John, is to review all these films leading up to Welcome to Raccoon City in November. Right. We can get all of them done. We're not that far away. We got 4 more movies left. And they kind of take a turn after this, slowly but surely.
Yeah, Extinction
without giving away our opinions too much.
Yeah, Extinction's kind of like RE4, where like it's not bad, it's good, but then what's to follow not necessarily was the right direction. I think that's a safe way to put it. Right. Not that I'm saying Extinction is as good as RE4. I'm just saying
RE4 is still a masterpiece. Regardless.
Yeah, RE4 is a masterpiece.
And Extinction's not close to a masterpiece of a film.
No.
But what he's saying is they took that and started to kind of twist it more down the road. And Afterlife is when we're going to start talking about that.
It's also interesting that they directly correlate because RE4 came out, Extinction came out, and then both went...
Right, and it's also interesting that Paul Anderson is not on the director's chair for Extinction. Again. So it's another... little bit of a like for some reason my 2 favorite ones out of this bulk of films happen to be Apocalypse and Extinction, but we'll get to that. We'll get kind of more into that.
We'll get to that. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Yeah, no,
as
thank
Anthony
you.
has said. Let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, what was your favorite part of Apocalypse?
Yeah.
Was it the fact that Nemesis looked badass? Was it the fact Alice stole all of Jill's thunder because you hate Jill for some reason and you're in the wrong channel?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, let us know in the comments below, and then like Anthony said in the beginning of this podcast, if you're listening across all of our social media platforms, check us out on YouTube as well. Come leave a comment. Review our podcast too, by the way.
Yeah,
you
can.
On the social media platforms.
You can leave the stars, give us stars reviews. That helps us out so people know that we're legit, and because we are.
Yeah.
And,
And some of the reviews we've gotten on there are really nice, and they're really great. If you're listening to this, take the time to review our show. Get it out there to more people.
Share it.
People can discover us.
And, we got our Discord, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And don't forget our Patreon. It's down below. And you can listen to this podcast uncut right now. We got a couple viewers in here, and we appreciate that. They're Patreon supporters. $10 tier and up. You can also join in on the uncut. They start at $1. If you do $10, you can listen to these episodes uncut live as we're doing them, which is something really cool that all the fans seem to like. So we're going to continue to do that going forward. So, yeah.
And I really want to stress, too, just as we're wrapping up here, the Discord is very important.
Big on the community.
Going forward, especially since, as many of you know who are listening to this, me and Anthony are opening a second channel called 2Player, and we're going to be working on both LTRE and 2Player 5 days a week, every week, between the two of them. Discord is going to be a great tool, better than Twitter, better than Facebook, better than even YouTube
for
in some
direct
aspects.
access.
Yeah,
direct
access and all news. So what's going on? Is something getting delayed? Are we pushing something back? Are we going live at a part? Are we doing community events? Are we doing trivia nights? Are we doing... Discord is so important. And for those of you who are wondering, the 2Player Discord will be up tomorrow. which is probably going to be like a week ago past this video. So the Discord's already up for 2-player.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find a link to that one in LTRE's Discord server under the Support Us tab. Go join our Discord, guys. Even if you only listen to this podcast audio, it's an incredible place. We have great people. We have good mods. I am always on it, kicking people who don't belong. So like we're great. It's a great place.
Yeah, we're on there chatting with people. We come into voice chat and stuff like that from time to time. So
every YouTube video, every YouTube short, Patreon movie nights, Patreon podcast nights where we do the podcast live, like Anthony said. All that stuff's on Discord, and you get the notifications every time, and you can customize which channels give you notifications so you don't have to get spammed. If you just want news alerts and stuff, you could just make it that.
Or if you just want to come in when you want to chat it up, some RE.
You can mute the whole server.
Yep. You can do whatever you want. Yes, it's really important, and don't forget to hit that thumbs up, and like John said, leave a comment. And thank you for all the love and support. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Peace out.
Peace out. A big shout out to everyone that supports us over on Patreon. Starting at just $1 a month, you can support us on Patreon, and $5 and up, you get exclusive content and perks as well. Thank you so much for all your love and support, and we'll catch you next time.